Okay, John. James Parker, how's it going, mate? Thanks for sending me your golf swing in. I appreciate it. Right, so just got your questionnaire up, going through what you've told me about your game and your shot pattern. Yes, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're struggling with a slice and a push slice, and that makes a lot of sense. And also topping the ball, miss-hitting the ball, right? So why don't we start with the miss-hitting, right? Which means you've got a low point issue. So the things that I'm picking up with that is at impact, and even though it's a little bit blurry, we can still make it out. You're at impact there, your hands are a little bit too far back. We want them more forward, meaning, we want your hands more underneath. I'll do this in a circle. We want your hands more here, so that your left arm is more there, directly underneath your left shoulder at impact, right? So your hands are a little bit too far back on the circle. So we need to get your hands forward more, and the way that we're going to do that is by turning more, right? So you have to understand that the more you turn, the more you're going to get your hands on forward on the circle, right? Also, the low point, the more you move your hips forward towards the target, that produces some right tilt in your spine, and that's going to help you keep your hands away from your chest and push forward. That's going to help you get your hands forward as well, right? But the one thing I want you to think about to start with, before going too deep into your golf swing so you don't understand it, is at impact there, you can see how your shoulders and your hips are pretty square with the target line, right? The pros at impact have their shoulders out the way 30 odd degrees and their hips turned out the way 30 odd degrees, right? So if you can just get that, paint a picture, an image in your mind there of where you are and where we want to be, and I'll pull some examples up in a second. That's going to help you get your hands more forward on the circle, and help you hit down on the ball more, right? The other thing with regards to your low point issues and why you're topping it is just how much you're moving your hips forward, right? So when we start, we've got a little circle around the center of our hips. We want them moving forward. We want them moving past that, over that front red line. And even at impact, post impact here, you're never really getting your hips past that front red line, right? So all this is connected, right? One thing kind of leads to another. So if you're not sliding your hips forward, it's very easy then to keep this right foot on the ground, which is what you're doing, right? You see the pros at this point, they've got the heel slightly off the ground. At impact, they've got the heel even more off the ground, and I'll pull some examples up in a second just to show you, right? So if you can, firstly understand where we need to be. We need our shoulders out the way, we need our hips out the way, turned out the way, that is, and also have your hips more forward this way, right? So the center of your hips is maybe there at the moment. Let's get your center of your hips forward over here, more over your left foot, right? So your hips are more over your left foot at impact. That in itself then will help you bring your right heel off the ground, and you'll start to see a big difference in your ball striking. All right. So that's how I would go about understanding why you're topping it. Okay. Now, the other things that I've noted, your slice and your push slice. As you come down, the club gets across the line at the top because we're overturning. Okay, and we'll go into that a little bit in a second. Your hips are overturning, which allows your upper body to overturn. So you get the club across the line at the top, which obviously will contribute to your lack of turn coming down. If you're turning too much going back, you've got to turn further and harder to come down to impact, right? So that's why the top of the swing, what we call P4, position 4, is really important. But what you do from here, you go back and it's a little straight back, isn't it, with your arm and the hands, and then you kind of lift your arm up off your chest a little bit, your left arm that is, Your hands are a little high, even though you do actually keep your hands behind your right shoulder. If I draw a green line up there from your right shoulder, your hands are still behind your right shoulder, right? But then as we start to come down, you can see how that first bit coming down, the hands are kind of coming through the right shoulder, the shaft is coming through the right shoulder. The pros are bringing the club down. If you watch the general pattern of most of the pros, there's always going to be guys that don't do it like everybody else, right? But you look at the general patterns of the pros, they're bringing the hands and the shaft down through their right bicep, which would be more sort of down that green line, right? So you can see you're very over the top coming down into what we call P5. P5 is when your left arm's parallel with the ground, right? So you've got a pattern coming down of someone that slices the ball, right? If you come down too steep, that's going to keep the face open longer, and then you're going to come through with an open face, which we'll talk about in a second, your face to path relationship. But what you do here, because of your lack of turn, you then kind of reroute the club head, and the club head ends up underneath the red line, right? So you're still attacking the ball from the inside, but that's because of your lack of turn, and you also staying on your back foot, right? But certainly as we come down there, that's the position that we want to try and change. We need to get you in a better position at the top, and also that will then affect how you start down, right? And then the other problem is obviously the face to path relationship. So we have the one thing I picked up with the face, and all these things are related to the shot pattern that you've told me you're hitting, right? The slice and the push slice. So what I noticed there coming down into just before impact at P6 is just how open your face is there, right? So what changes? So that's kind of the diagnosis of why you're slicing and you're push slicing it and you're topping it, right? So what changes? If we were spending some time together on the range, we were going to have an hour or two knocking this out and figuring it out. What changes would need to take place? What would I ask you to do to positively change and alter the shot pattern, right? Well, the hand, like I said before, the hands. If we work on you're topping it first, right? We need to consistently hit the ball properly to even get round the golf course, right? If you can't even get the club on the ball properly every time, you're not even going to be able to play the game, right? We'll figure out the shot pattern and all that stuff after. But the first thing we need to change would be, like I said, getting your hands more forward at impact so that your left arm doesn't look like that at impact. With the pros have their arm kind of down below their left shoulder at impact. So we need to get your hands forward, and that is through the lack of turn, right? Which I told you about there. So it's understanding where you are at impact with your shoulders and your hips, and where we want to be, right? So green line is where you are now. Blue line is kind of where we want to be, right? And also, so that's the turning aspect, but also the hips aren't forward enough, and the right foot is down on the ground too much, right? So we need our hips sliding forward more, and also we need this right heel starting to come off the ground, and that will free you up to be able to turn your hips and also slide your hips even more, all right? And again, I'll show you some examples of that in a second. Let me just get rid of these lines. So that's how I'd change your low point so that you instantly start striking the ball better, right? The next one, the path. The path is dictated by the plane, right? So you can see as you come down there, it's very much over the top of the red line, right? So when we set up to it, we've got a line going through the shaft. We've also got a line going through your right shoulder, your right elbow. And, you know, like I said, the patterns that you see the pros come down is more sort of through here. It's the club and the hands are dissecting the middle of their right bicep, right? But also going back, you know, that their hands are going through the base of their bicep, and yours is going a little bit too high. But that's because you're overturning, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So I would want to change the top of the swing position, and then that will then affect how you come down. It's that position that we need to change there, right? P5, which is too steep and over the top. And then what you do is from there, you extend your spine. You see your head coming up. You can see your butt coming off that red line. So you're extending your spine too early, which then, you know, obviously affects the path, right? You're going to attack it too much from the inside, and then obviously the lack of the turn, and you know, sets the club then underneath the bottom line, underneath the bottom red line, right? And then with regards to the face, well, the face is just open. Let me get rid of that line. The face is just open too much at this point, right? So you can see how the face here is very open at that point, right? So how would we implement this stuff, right? How would we go about implementing these changes, right? That's what they're the changes that need to take place. But how would we change them? Well, the first thing I would, you know, let's go back to the topping aspect or the mishitting aspect. The first thing I'd want you to do to help your low point control is understand, and you can do this at home. You can do this in a static position, right? So the first thing I would want you to do is to understand and be aware of where we need to be at impact, right? So if I pull you up there at P7, which is impact, and then I get a pro, let's use Fleetwood. I'm using him a lot at the moment, right? And then we stop Tommy Fleetwood at impact right there, where you can see some big differences, right? The turn, his shoulders are open, his hips are open, and he's got his right foot off the ground, right? So your shoulders are kind of square, your hips are very square, and your right foot's on the ground. So I would want you to kind of understand where you are there, right? Understand what your pattern is, what your tendencies are, and then understand where the pros get into an impact and burn that image into your mind, and then just go and practice that one position, right? Feed your brain that kind of information of where we need to be at impact, and then tell it, right, well, we need to make a move to get back to there when we're striking the golf ball, right? So that's the first thing I do with regards to teaching you low point control, right? The next thing, get rid of these lines. The next thing would be the path, right? So how would we change your path? So I need to get another example up here just to give you an idea of what I want you to work on, right? This is a guy named Charlie Wee, actually kind of semi-retired recently. Maybe he's going to play on the seniors. Maybe he's going to play on the senior tour or something. But if we draw some lines up his swing, one through the club, one kind of through his elbows, right? What I want you to do is we need to get into a better position at P4. Now we know we're kind of over-rotating a little bit, right? We'll talk about that in a second. And then from that position, we come down kind of over the top, right? So it's the P4 position we need to get better, right, to then affect the P5 position, right? P4 is the top, P1's there, P2's there, P3's there, P4's at the top, P5 is when you start down, right? So if we stop you at the top there, and then we stop Charlie Wee at the top, right? You can see there's a massive difference there with a few things. Number one, where his hands are, right? Number two, where his arm is. So you see your arm is a lot higher than your shoulder plane, right? So you kind of got a two-plane swing. You know, I would prefer your hands being over here somewhere and your arm being there, so your arm kind of matches up with your shoulders, right, to make it a one-plane swing. And then from that position, he's then able to come down there, right? So you can see how as he comes down from that position, because he's in a better position at the top, he can then come down and the club and his hands are coming through his right bicep, through the middle of his right bicep there, right? And the club's slightly underneath the top red line. As you come down, you can see how your hands are coming through your shoulder, dissecting your shoulder, and the shaft's coming through your shoulder as well, right? So if we draw some green lines where his club is now starting down, this is the start of the downswing, compared to your start of your downswing, you can see how steep it is, right? It's pointing nowhere near the ball, right? So we need to change the top of your swing position. So the way that we're going to do that is if we go from setup to P2 and we stop you there, and again draw some lines here. So your arms there, and we stop him in P2, right? Just look at how much he's moved his hands inward more, right? So he's moved his hands from here to here, so they're going inward, right? You've moved your hands from there to there, right? So they're kind of coming back dead straight. Okay, so I need your hands moving more inward, right? I need your hands moving more, so your left inward, so your left arm is more inward over here. I need your hands and your arm moving more inward this way in the takeaway, all right? That in itself will help you keep your arms connected, right, and help you turn more in the takeaway so that you don't feel like you have to overturn when you get to the top and get the club too far across the line at the top as well, right? So all these things are connected, right? What I also want you to do, let me get somebody else. Just bear with me a second here. I want to find a good example for you. Yeah, Andy Plummer. Right, so if we get you from face on here and we draw a little circle, whoops, we draw a little circle round his left knee, round your left knee, and then we get him to the top, you can see how that left knee's definitely come down and inward a little bit, right? If I slow it down for you, that left knee's come down and inward a little bit, but I mean, how much are we talking? A few inches down, a few inches inward, right? Yours starts coming down, then it starts coming inward, 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 right? So it's kind of, you know, what I would describe as collapsed a little bit, whereas he's kind of kept his knee nice and stable over his lead foot, and then as he starts down, he's then able to get his left knee moving forward. Look. Right, so you see how he's got his left knee moving forward, and then eventually the left knee ends up past, right, before impact, the left knee ends up past his left ankle. So, you know, now the left knee is there, now the ankle's there, right? So we're kind of forming that angle, right? So that in itself is going to help you shift your weight and get your hips more over your left foot. Right, you look at where he's at impact and post-impact here, his hips are over his lead foot, right? So when you hit it, your hips are nowhere near over your lead foot, right? So the other thing I want you to practice with regards to getting a better top of the swing position, right, is by kind of bracing your lower body a little bit, right? I think your lower body's too active. You definitely got too much hip turn here, which allows you to have too much upper body turn, right? Don't forget, we only want about 45-degree hip turn and about 90-degree shoulder turn, right? Because we need to get back to that position of impact where the shoulders and hips are turned out the way, right? We know we need to get there because we've measured the pros. This is what the average tour pro does. They're the experts, so we model them and use them as examples. So I would practice keeping this left knee more over your lead ankle as you get up to the top, right? And there's a good drill I've got. There's inside the academy, there's a course called the Roll of the Spine. And I talk about how the hips work, how the shoulders work, how the spine tilts and turns and extends. There's also a drill in there called the left knee drill. And it describes how we want to keep that left knee over the ankle. So then as we start down, right, we can get the left knee moving forward to get it going past your ankle. Right, you can see how your left knee it's actually still behind it there, look. Right, and then never really gets past your left ankle. Well, what I'm saying is, if your left ankle was here now, and you had your left knee there, so you're forming that sort of angle with your left leg, right, like you see these pros do, right. I'll pull up another example. Dustin Johnson, right, but watch his left knee. Right, so they're all going to have that similar sort of look, right? They're all going to have that similar sort of look. Robert Rock, one of my favourite swings. Yeah, there you go. Right, so they're always going to have that similar sort of look where the knee is getting past the ankle, right? So in a nutshell, we want your left knee to remain You can't get that coming down if your left knee is caving in this way too much. Right, it's going to be very difficult. So I want you to limit how much your left knee comes inward this way. Right, I want you to limit that and try and keep it over your left ankle, and then you'll be able to get it more sort of how the pros get it, moving forward as you start the downswing. All right. And then let me pull up this one. And then I'm talking about a lot of things because there's you've got a swing where there's a few things that are really contributing to your shot pattern. And if I just said, oh, go away and work on this, and you made it better, you'd still probably have the same shot pattern. So I want to, in your first lesson here, in your evaluation, I want to be very thorough and make you aware of the things we have to change to eventually change your shot pattern, right? So then with regards to, don't forget your pattern that you're telling me is a slice and a push slice, right? So most of your shots are ending up over here somewhere, right? A push slice, so it's over there with a curve, and a slice which would start this way and end up over there with a curve. So both those shot patterns are with the club face open, right? So if you look at the club face there, to me that's open, right? And then if we actually zoom in on your hand and your wrist, so if we draw a line down there, your forearm and your wrist is actually coming this way, right? So you're actually bending your left wrist, which is the opposite of what I want you to do. I want you to bow your left wrist, okay? I want your wrist looking as though it's coming this way, kind of really Dustin Johnson-esque, where you're bowing that left wrist, okay? So let me try and find you an example, good example of that. Yeah, so maybe Rocky. If we zoom in here, right. So as he comes down, what you're going to find as they come down, if we zoom in a little bit here, is their forearms there, but their wrist is always going to have a tendency of coming back this way, right? It's trying to come back this way, right? So really bowing your left wrist, and as you come down, you look at where your club face is there, and you look at where his club face is, and the toe is just slightly ahead of the heel, right? Your toe is actually behind the heel, right? So that's why I'm trying to get you to change the club face angle, and we're going to change the club face angle by changing your wrist conditions, okay? So that's what I want you to be aware of as well. When you come down, I want you to hit the ball with a bowed left wrist, not letting that left wrist just bend and cup, all right? But again, you got to understand all this and do it in slow motion to really fathom it out, right? But then if we pull up Fleetwood again, which I think was a good example, all right, and we zoom out for you, I want you to do all of this stuff, right? Those few little things, right? A few things relating to low point, a few things regarding your path and the plane, and also your wrist conditions with regards to changing the club face position. But I want you to do that in a better posture, okay? And the better posture is going to help it all work easier and flow together easier. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing, if we draw a line down from your butt, and we draw a line up from the bottom of your back, and we do the same with Tommy Fleetwood, and then draw a line up from the bottom of his back. So there's a few things which really stand out to me here, and I'll do this in red lines. Number one, if we go inward from that green line, there's a lot of space there, right, from your butt line to your heel, right? If we draw a line from Fleetwood, that green line from his butt to his heel, that's maybe half the distance, right? So we need your hips coming forward more, right? So to you, from that position, you're probably feeling as though you're very much on your heels. When you bring your hips closer to the ball, it's going to feel like you're kind of evenly positioned on your balls of your feet and your heels, okay? So that's the first thing. I want you to stand close to the ball, and it's going to feel different in your feet, right? The second one is how he's got his upper back kind of arched over more, so that the back of his head here is nowhere near that green line, right? So you've got your head kind of very up like this. So I want to start to see some more arching in your upper back, okay? And the way that you're going to do that is just by bringing your chin lower down. So you look at his chin angle there, and you look at your kind of the angle of your chin. So all I'd want you to do is bring your chin closer to your chest, and that will kind of arch your upper back over. And once you change those few things, getting your hips more forward, arching your upper back so that your chin's a little lower to your chest, and then implementing these things that I talked about, I think that will set you on the path, on the road to a much better golf swing. So that's my that's my two penneth, John. If you have any questions or comments, mate, just shoot me over an email. If you don't understand anything, by all means, just shoot me an email. We'll go back and forth so that you understand this. That's the most important thing. All right, mate. I'll speak to you soon.